of the news.
They can't see us.
I don't know. I don't think anybody's watching yet, so that was okay. We are here, and I hope the audio is sounding a little bit better. We are going to reintroduce you to our guest this evening, whose name is
Nicole Rowan.
And she works as a
pastor.
It's like a Mad Lib, but for interviewing. So tell them, you work as a pastor. What do you do? How long have you been doing it? And give us the whole nine.
Yeah, since no one's listening. Yeah, so I
well, it'll go on YouTube later.
Oh, okay, awesome.
Yeah.
With our best friends.
For no one to watch.
And yeah, I've been in ministry for 7 years, graduate of Hope International, where I met this fella. Yeah.
I think that's the first time we've ever publicly said the name Hope on the podcast.
Yes,
is that not good?
No, I mean, it's not bad. I just think it's...
We're just fired, that's all.
Represent.
None of us work.
Where they went
to school. So, none of us work here, so which is good. So, anyway, we're just simply... I mean, James works there, so it's not your problem or my problem.
It's just James' problem.
Yeah, just James's. Jamothy? James.
This is getting worse, by the way.
How we go? Okay, so... no, you're fine. Do us a favor, share the vids real quick on your cell phones, gents, and see if we can
don't share.
throw this
It'll divide it all up
out
share.
A little bit.
Because I'm feeling whatever, so I don't know.
Yeah,
I
so
liked it.
make sure to like it. If you are watching this video and if you are joining us, every every time we record, we like to do a little bit of a new segment in just really the fact that there's value in kind of being able to discuss things as they happen and like why they're happening and what's going on in our world. Partly because as people who work in ministry and as people who are part of the ministry setting, the things that go on in this world are extremely important. It's important for us to have a what's called a global perspective, right? Both a global and a local understanding of
global.
Did you just make that up?
No, it's a real term.
Those are the opposite.
It's a mission. It's a missions. Big missions.
Some people have glaucemia.
I don't know. I don't know what that is. So basically, for the next few minutes or so,
the world is depressing here.
Those are the ramblings of one anarchist, Chris Carmen.
Globally depressing.
I'm just going to go ahead and read some little news reactions, and I want you guys to respond. If you have any particular expertise on each of these subjects that we'll talk about, which I'm sure...
I would love for Facebook people to respond to these, and they've probably been seeing these all day long and like commenting on their own Facebook feed that no one watches. But now they can do live and get our feedback to their ridiculous theories. Can you imagine if someone like Chris was
bring your ridiculous theories?
Yeah, we'll talk about it. We will talk about your ridiculous conspiracies.
That is our hashtag. Bring your ridiculousness, and we will discuss it. So first thing, guys and lady, is North Korea is retaliating after U.S. sanctions target Kim Jong-un specifically. So. This article is from CBSNews.com, and I think what's interesting...
We should be particularly worried if he brings in Alec Baldwin for any...
interviews?
Yeah, if he, for any shows there on, in North Korea.
I have no idea what that is.
There's a movie all about that.
The Interview?
No, everybody, you've not seen the movie.
Apparently, with North Korea.
The Interview with Kim Jong-un and James Franco, which is also another fantastic film that he did, by the way. Is that what you're talking about?
We should send James Franco and Seth Rogen to North Korea as our ambassadors.
They were already there.
I'm sure they will represent us very well.
Couldn't do any worse than Dennis Rodman. So, anyway, last week the U.S. government imposed sanctions on Kim and 10 other officials for kind of the human rights abuses that go on there. And not the first time that this has been a reality for North Korea and for their... silly man leader.
Can you tell us how we further impose sanctions on North Korea?
Yeah, it's looking like...
What's left to say?
I was going to say, were they allowed to come to like Disney World and now they can't?
And no, it's all relating to their development of the nuclear program in North Korea.
I thought they don't care what we think about that.
And right, and this is our response to that non-caring. So,
which is
we're gonna not care harder.
Yeah,
I
so
thought they don't care if we sanction them.
The sanction plan seems to be working great so far.
Yes. So we're working hand in hand, tandemly, to see who can not care the most. So essentially, what happened is the North States media said that it told the United States it will terminate contact through a UN channel in New York that allowed diplomats to communicate. So like no talking whatsoever, and this has made South Korea particularly nervous because of North Korea's specific and open threats to go ahead and nuke them kind of as a country, right? So North Korea is not getting ready, is openly threatening and.
Doesn't using a nuclear weapon on the person next door seem like a bad idea?
Well, okay, so that's what I wanted to inquire about.
We want your land back after we nuke it.
So, Garrett is our local, how would we say this, nuclear weapons senior analyst. And so, would you mind telling us a little bit about the fallout that occurs from a nuclear explosion and how long the half-life of radiation is?
I like that it sounds like what basically was given in silent treatment, which is kind of funny and childish at the same time. So nuclear fallout.
Well, what else should
unless
they
they
do?
use hydrogen, and it's not quite a hydrogen nuclear weapon. It's not quite as bad as an
It's
atomic.
like the nuclear hand grenade.
Plutonium. Hydrogen.
No, just
Oh,
bombing the person next door.
Right.
Okay, so what should they do instead?
America
Yeah, what should we do instead in terms of our relationship towards them?
to intercede with their nuclear plans.
How do we do that? By force?
Well, what do we do now? We try to not let them participate in other international UN discussions and things like that because they won't get rid of their nuclear weapons. I think Jane Franco's got a good idea. I think we just go right in there with some of our top actors and entertain the heck out of them.
Okay, to show them what the West is really about. So we'll keep a further eye on this, and Garrett will bring you in more so as we
I guess I will.
as we need. So Nicole, this one I would love for your own perspective. Okay, so last week, if you followed or if you were with us, we discussed the idea of the Ghostbusters trailer that was coming out and kind of a lot of the hate that this movie has been
So give us some of the background on
receiving.
what's happened specifically with this trailer.
Yeah, so this Ghostbusters movie has been a remake of the loved Ghostbusters film from the late 80s.
It's a reboot.
Yeah, so as this reboot happens, it has been played by all female characters in the cast. Now, I don't ever feel qualified to speak directly on female issues, not being a female. And I feel like there's a little bit of that's happened in history, probably not much, but some. And so as this movie has received a lot of criticism, by and large because it is a remake, people are saying, but also because they're casting 4 women. So the debate has come down to whether or not a movie with women as the reboot is worth making. Have you any thoughts on this remake or anything of this?
Well, first you have to tell that it is
discussion?
now the most disliked video on YouTube in history. The trailer for this. So the trailer came out, what, a month and a half ago, 2 months ago?
So it is literally worse than Hitler.
Yeah, it's the most disliked video on YouTube. Just the trailer for it, not like someone.
So what is your response as somebody who deals with being a woman daily in terms of like a patriarchal kind of setting as far as Hollywood is concerned, right? Where there's and don't know why that was such a funny comment, but the idea of
Struggles.
no, I
terrible, Josh.
deals with in terms of this kind of having to hear this kind of talk
sitting next to people like Josh, who says things like that
constantly or consistently. What is the overall experience for you in terms of hearing this kind of blowback from something that doesn't? So I watched the trailer. Have you seen the trailer for it yet? It doesn't look any worse or better to me than any other movie trailer. So I don't know. What are your own thoughts on something like this? Just at this, what this picture represents larger than.
Yeah, I mean, it's kind of a bummer that we make a big deal about an all-female cast. I mean, Melissa McCarthy's pretty awesome.
She's absolutely hilarious.
And it's super funny, and so that's a bummer. But I actually haven't heard any negativity about this, so I'm super in the loop about what's happening
Okay,
with Ghostbusters.
good. Okay,
Yeah.
so that goes to show that we can still shield, and we can still be shielded from stupid negativity, or maybe potentially unnecessary negativity. James, you want to chime in?
Well, we already talked about the pre-release for, and I think what we're going to talk about today is a little bit different, which is it's now getting reviewed officially. People are seeing it and reviewing it, and it's getting mediocre reviews. And so, and not by like men or anything like that. Like IGN had a lady reviewer. I can't remember her name. Usually Lucy O'Brien does their movie reviews, but it wasn't Lucy O'Brien. And
Terry Schwartz.
Terry Schwartz, and her review of it, if I remember, sort of the main points was that the 4 leading actresses were great, but the movie was just not very good as a movie. And the Metacritic score is what, Josh?
62
out of 100.
Yeah. So what? Explain to us, James. What is a Metacritic score?
Yeah, Metacritic is a website that basically follows all the critics, both official and unofficial, as they can, as many as they can, and brings all their reviews together and gives averages across all the reviewers out there. So if a movie comes out they get all the famous reviews. They put links to them, and they get their scores. And then they, some people review out of 5 stars. Some people review out of thumbs ups and whatever. And what they do is they make it an average out of 100%. So 3 stars would be like a 66, right, out of 100. And then they provide that average score to the public. And it's not a perfect system by any means because, for example, different reviewers quantify what their numbers mean differently. So for some people, put it this way, if you get reviewed by IGN where they have a 100-point system, if you get let's say a 6.5 out of 10 there, that's considered just okay, like bordering mediocre okay. But a 3 out of 5 stars, which is technically within the same percentage, is considered to be a good or decent review in some places. So Metacritic gets criticized for this, but it's still a decent tool for kind of seeing where things are headed, where people's heads are on a movie, and the early reviews of it are that it's just kind of mediocre, or just okay reviews.
Look at Superman and Batman, I guess.
Was the original Ghostbusters that good?
Yes.
Not
I
really.
think it aged better
For
with
its time, for sure. But this was the defense. There was all this reaction. Basically, all these people said, "Oh, this movie's gonna be terrible," because they saw those 4 ladies and all of this as the main characters. And the response to that was, "Well, you can't hate it until it comes out and you see it for yourself."
Uh-huh.
Now the big reversal is that all of these official reviews are coming out and they're not really that great. So what does that do to complicate the cultural discussion here?
Right.
Which is the cultural discussion was you can't immediately hate something because there's women in it, or because men have been replaced with women. But that conversation is about to get murky because this movie is turning out to be not that great.
Okay, so to further complicate things, Chris, I'm not going to call you out, but speaking of bandwagons, I think people jumped on the hate of the movie way for many other reasons other than the fact that women were in it. Am I right?
Yeah.
And that the fact that women are in it is maybe being touted by specific media outlets as the reason why people don't like it.
It started off getting bad, the trailer getting bad reception.
Because women were in it, or because
no, just because it looked corny and some of the jokes they showed in the trailer were pretty cheesy, and then everybody came out to defend it and called everyone who didn't like it a misogynist.
Right.
And so then the internet kind of backlash really took off from there. Then the director started cursing at anybody who was bad-mouthing the trailer on Twitter.
And all of that's true, but to complicate it, though, people were hating it before the trailer came out. When they said we're rebooting Ghostbusters with an all-female cast, it was immediately hated.
But it was a reboot discarding all the old stuff, which always riles up a bunch of people whenever you do it with anything.
I thought that female cast was a good idea. When I said that reboot, if you're going to reboot it, you might as well do something differently.
Yeah.
If it's too similar to the original, it gets compared too much, and then it can never really live up to.
Well, the weird thing is the people who are making this movie, when they announced they were first rebooting this franchise and making an all-female cast, and then all that furor happened, all that response happened before the trailer, they quickly followed up that news by saying we're also going to make an all-male cast movie as well,
like sequel to this with an all-male cast,
just a different branch of the tree. So
it kind of seems like everyone's trying a little too hard, doesn't it?
Yeah.
I just don't understand why you keep remaking movies. That seems to be where we're headed.
Because there's no good ideas.
Hollywood.
Everything's a remake.
That's because Disney stole it.
Most of the first movies were remakes of plays.
Free copyrights on movies that prevent you from coming up with new ideas. Okay, so I don't know. Are you gonna see the movie?
Yeah.
Okay, I'll go see it too. That's good. I don't know. Looked fine. Okay, probably turn into more important stuff. The latest on the Alton Sterling shooting investigation. So, Alton Sterling, if you have been living with your head under a rock for the last week and a half, was a gentleman who was fatally shot while pinned to the ground after selling CDs outside of a convenience store where he had permission to be. So, essentially what's happening now at this point is that the convenience store owner is suing the police because of their lack of cooperation with him. They captured and took his video footage.
Not lack of cooperation. Without a warrant, they took all of his security footage.
They took his stuff there without asking him, held him in a police car for 4 hours. He had to urinate in front of police officers, and then they took him to jail where they kept him for another couple hours.
They treated him like a prisoner and a criminal when he was just the owner of the shop where this crime happened.
Yeah, and in addition to that, the DA has recused himself due to being close with the one of the officers in the actual case itself, and police have stated that they have the dash cam video, the body cam video, the store surveillance footage, and that's all going to be turned in and turned over to the Justice Department. There's obviously cell phone video that's gone around because that's how most of us probably first saw.
Well, it also raises the question, would they actually release any of this stuff if it wasn't for the cell phone video becoming viral first?
To the public.
Right, because it's that cell phone video that got out to the public and made this a story. Before that, all we had was the police without a warrant going in and securing all the video footage for themselves and taking it away without the owner's permission.
Yeah, so do you think, in your guys' opinion, what impact do you think, if at all, does this new news kind of coming out as the story continues to develop and break, what impact does this have on kind of the court of public opinion for the police in terms of what to be expected or kind of how this thing is going to be handled?
It comes off as vigilantism on the police side of things, in the sense that they seem to be acting outside the law a bit without using a warrant, for example. And it also comes off bad because they are acting outside the law to gather potential evidence, which that seems bad. This week has been a mess of news when it comes to police and various other people and all the violence happening between, especially African Americans and police. And this just is adds just another awful layer to the whole thing, where it makes the police look really bad. I'm not somebody who sees one of these videos and immediately thinks the cops had no right or shouldn't have done what they did. I like to usually withhold judgment to see what happens and how the legal system plays out and to see what other new evidence comes into play before I make any kind of fast judgments. But when you hear that the police were just sort of securing all of this evidence without warrant, that kind of makes this particular situation look really bad, really scary. Yeah.
I think that the decision to shoot someone is very, very difficult for police to make, and I think that because of that difficulty and because of the way that they're trained, that they're not necessarily trained that it's a last resort, they're trained that it's a viable option at any moment you approach someone, just because you don't know their intention.
Yeah.
I think unfortunately, you're going to have some cases where it really wasn't the best option, and I think police need a lot better way of kind of handling that unfortunate situation, because it seems like they're not. I mean, this is no disrespect to families being shot, but the cops it seems like their only recourse is oh crap, we shouldn't have done that, and then they just break all these rules.
Right.
The body cam is supposed to prevent that, but now it sounds like if they really wanted to, they could take that evidence and destroy it or hide it. So
Yeah.
we need to have a much better. They do a lot of training on whether or not to shoot someone. They need a lot better follow up on what's supposed to happen when they don't follow. What happens when they do shoot someone, and if they don't follow these guidelines, then they're done.
Right.
And we need to not protect people who having to make that decision. Well, what I'm trying to say, it's hard to punish someone who makes a wrong decision when we expect the police to have the lives of someone in their responsibility. But when that decision happens, and if it was the wrong decision, there needs to be better follow-up for what happens after that. And if it means losing your job, then that's what you need to know going in before you shoot someone. And then if you get caught trying to avoid that, then it should be even worse.
Yeah, so Nicole, for you for this last week, kind of reading about Alton, reading about Dallas, right, being from the South and just the Southern region, in general, what has this kind of all looked like to you recently, and then in light of this, in terms of what are your thoughts on the subject as a whole?
Yeah, I've tried to avoid this question.
Sorry.
No, it's fine. So my dad's a police officer,
Right.
And he's actually a major now in Kentucky, and so I oftentimes have these conversations with him, and James kind of take the same approach as you, is try and weigh and see all the evidence and not base my conclusion off of someone's phone video. And regardless, as corny as it sounds, all lives do matter, and I think that might be a little not the best terminology to use for the African American community, but regardless of police officer or civilian, no one should be shot. And so surely, these police officers are trained. And there are going to be some that just make stupid decisions, and there are going to be civilians who make stupid decisions. And it's actually not in my role of responsibility to make that for the public or for the police officers. And so I'm kind of still in a position of, it's just a really crappy situation, you know, what happened there and then again in Dallas. And I kind of took the Dallas piece personally because my father wears his uniform 3 times a week. He doesn't have to wear, but he's one of the highest ranking officers, and so he wears it 3 times a week. And to assume, or to imagine, I guess, him getting shot just because people are peed off is unfortunate. And so, yeah, there's probably not enough time to uncover my full thoughts on everything. I've seen all of the responses on Facebook and on Instagram, and everyone seems pretty passionate about topics that they actually aren't qualified or educated enough on. And so just out of my own responsibility of being a human being, I try to not to speak on that until after we know what happens. We don't know what this investigation is going to hold. We don't know who truly is at fault just yet. There are a lot of speculations, but those are my overall opinions as of now.
The problem here is hindsight's 20/20, right? Police officers, when they're in a hot moment, right? You're acting on intuition. You're making decisions within seconds, if seconds, maybe a second, maybe a partial second, and that's tough. That's a tough situation, and you're not thinking what is the reasonable thing to do.
Sure.
You're just reacting, and hopefully your reactions are well trained. And but then what happens is we all get to reflect upon whatever decisions were made in that split second for the next few months as we debate about it as a society.
Pre-investigation.
Right. Yeah, and then in hindsight, things are so much clearer, or at least we perceive them to be, and that colors our conversation is biased towards having all the information, which is not something
or not being in a life and death situation.
Yeah, something
second to decide.
Something that kind of sobered my mind up a little bit is there's some group I don't follow them, but apparently people in my Facebook feed do, called Police World. I think that's what they're called. And somebody had shared one of their videos, and I just was like, let's click on it, see what it is. And it was gruesome. First of all, it was gruesome, and it was just like tons of footage of dash cam footage of when things went bad for the police. And the video basically called you out to say, try to figure out at what point you could know that person had a gun. Right. And then it was just like repeatedly like these instant moments where the police officer gets shot. Right. And I was like, and it was very sobering. Obviously I knew that police officers were in danger. Like, we all know that. But what it made me think of is, first of all, how fast it happens, and that can make police officers nervous. But secondly, it made me realize this, which is these videos become stories, and other than being in military service, police officers are the only profession in America where you're constantly hearing stories about your own getting shot, killed, or wounded. Like, it's part of the constant verbal narrative, the friends around the table, the stories going from precinct to precinct about what happened, like, in Fullerton and what happened in this place. And it probably could easily put you on edge if you're a police officer, hearing these constant stories about bad things happening to officers. And then once you're put on edge, that changes the way you act when you come into your own tense situation. And the rest of us don't have to deal with that, right? Like, I don't meet up with pastors and hear constant stories about pastors getting shot, right? Yeah. I might hear constant stories about pastors getting into a theological... Well, what makes me nervous as a pastor is I hear about the theological arguments that happen in the church and how that sometimes goes bad for pastors, and that makes me want to be careful about what I say theologically. Well, take that whole idea and make it now about guns and being a police officer. That's a whole new level of intensity.
Yeah, so we'll keep watching and we'll keep reporting as kind of the Alton Sterling thing continues to further develop. Also, Philando Castile. It was interesting. I preached on Sunday, right? And we talked about just the idea of what it looks like in terms of the suffering that people are going through, and I think it just makes me think, both as a pastor and just as a person, that there's a great value in not only withholding judgment, but also trying to take steps to be outside of oneself and one's own predisposition, as well as trying to take a look at the totality of evidence as you come across it and as you find it and as you absorb more of it, then also take a purposeful and intentional action to take a moment out of one's way to serve. There, by and large, helping people in different positions than you are, and really living out one's Christian faith in a way that goes beyond what has probably become a caricature, rightly or wrongly, of the social media or social justice warrior generation that is often classified as the millennial there. So if you come across this video at any point in time in your week, figure out a way to serve somebody, figure out a way to help somebody and where you are, and also because there's good to be done, and there's a lot of helping hands to be given out, but they need to be given, right? We need to be, especially people who are committed to being a part of the church, we need to be the ones that give them. So we will end on a high note and probably...
Actually, I had a great idea.
Oh yeah, go ahead.
We should save our final news idea for Pop Topic.
Okay, so we will go ahead and we will cut that short here. We would love to hear any responses you have or any thoughts that you might have regarding Alton Sterling, Philando Castile, or the Dallas police officers, all of whose lives were cut down short. And if you have anything to add in the comments, we would love to kind of talk and chat. But other than that, I guess we will say have a good week, and we will talk to you next time.
Yep. Tap the screen probably and just tap back twice.